Welcome back to another episode of the Momentum Shift podcast. Uh, I'm your uh, I'm your co-host Nishant. I'm your co-host Ayush, and my other co-host Nishant is here, and our guest Nadia is also here. And the topic for this episode is media and social media and the impact it has on our lives. So, what do you guys think about what do you guys think about how social media affects the our perceptions of the pandemic?
I think the most amazing thing about social media is the way that it joins like literally everyone. Like I may be sitting here and I could be talking to someone in the UK or in America. And so I think the crazy part is how news has been spread like so fast, like wildfire, even about the pandemic, about everything on social media. And it's that connectivity, I think, that draws people to be on social media.
Well, I don't think it's all necessarily um it's all sunshine and rainbows because in some scenarios what happens with social media is because of this how fast everything can be and all that, especially in reference to the pandemic, news can get spread so quickly and you never know what happens. So in India and other Asian countries, even in Africa, WhatsApp is very prevalent, and WhatsApp forwards are also very prevalent. And especially when the pandemic was starting, you got all these messages on it, advice on what to do, but you didn't know where they were from. They could be from anyone. You don't get the origin. It just says forwarded at the top. So don't you guys think it could harm the users of social media in that way also?
Yeah, the media can harm and do good, and it's pretty interesting because the media has such a big impact, and people just believe whatever they want to believe in, whatever they read, and they don't even fact check, they don't even look, and whatever somebody says to you, it could stick with you because it's the first thing you hear, and that's such a big impact on your opinion of the world and stuff.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with both of you. I think fake news is like a big part of social media. And I think it's why it makes news found on social media sometimes quite an irreliable source. So yeah, definitely.
I don't think it necessarily always has to be fake. It's just that the bias that goes into this could be a really, especially it becomes way easier on social media, but in general, just with the old-fashioned media, you can just use, so lots of news channels, they all sort of shift to one side of the spectrum on whatever issue there is, and whichever one you follow, you get biased news in that way, where if some event happens and if let's say some political leader does something, the news site that's with him is just going to highlight only the good things he did, and they're just going to gloss over all of the negative externalities, and the site that's against him would just only focus on uh, the not so bright side. And then the listeners of the sites would just get a very biased news, sorry.
Yeah, news isn't always just facts. It's really opinions at the end of the day, and based on whoever you watch, your opinion just changes, and their opinion spreads on you, and it's just interesting because so many people interact with the media on a daily basis, and people's opinions are so different from each other because of the fact that they're looking at different accounts on social media, or they're watching different TV channels, and um, people are just so different just because of the way they what the things they watch and the things they hear from people around them as well. Like if your parent came up to you one day and said, "Oh, you know, this person said this, and I saw it on this TV show," then your opinion's gonna be changed based on that as well.
I think a large part of
Yeah,
this would, yeah, you want to go, you can go.
no, I was just going to say that I think the special thing about social media is that it caters to every crowd, and that's why you'll find every sort of person with like all sorts of opinions on social media. And like you can always find some Instagram post that will agree with your opinion. And so I think that's one of the reasons why people find like a sort of community on social media as well.
So this community would just be of like-minded individuals, and I think the reason there have been such growing divides in sides of any debate, really political, economic, whatever type of debates there are, is because people tend to tend to like what they tend to hear what they want to hear. So if you're on one end of a spectrum and you go to a particular site that tells you what you want to hear, you're only going to continue with them, and you won't want to fact check them because you want to it's there's a saying, ignorance is bliss. So you don't want to know what actually goes down. You just want to get the view that your news channel portrayed to you and use that as much as you can.
Yeah, I was also reading an article about how 90% of Americans interact with the media on a daily basis. So you can just imagine how many people in the United States are being interacting with different types of media and how their opinions are changing every single day. And the media honestly has more power than the government in the United States because the government uses the media to spread its information, and the media is even bigger than the government. So it's just pretty interesting how much power it actually has.
And I think it has even more power because now, we see so many like privacy issues around social media. Like all of your information is available to private companies and you don't know where it's going. Like the number of instances where I've heard people are like, I was on a phone call and I was talking about something and I saw an ad about that exact same thing on Instagram. So I think that's really crazy. Like there's no way to trace it back, where our information is going. And I think that's what gives media so much more power over us as like consumers.
So to give a personal anecdote of this phone call example, I was on a call with Nishant a few months ago, I think, and there was just it was a WhatsApp call, and the first thing that's written on the top of a WhatsApp call is end-to-end encrypted. No one can listen in on your calls. Meanwhile, like half an hour into the call, some random dude just joined the call, and we don't. I thought it was his. I thought it was his dad or something. I don't know what he thought, but neither of us say anything. We just leave the call, and then later we try and figure out who this guy was. Neither of us had him in our contacts. Neither of us knew him. It was just really bizarre. And then I think the next, like 2 days later or something, he, I think Nishant, you were saying you got an ad for like fixing your phone or something like that, right?
Yeah,
That's actually so insane. And like it's happening to like you guys, like we're normal people, right? But it's happening to like big people, who have a media presence. Like I don't know if you guys know about this, but like a huge news reporter in India, his WhatsApp messages got leaked and it's become like a whole huge scandal. So if it can happen to someone who's like, a really big personality, it can happen to like any of us. And I think that's something that's so concerning to me about social media, and that's why I tend to stay away from it as much as possible.
yeah.
I'm sure the dependence we have on it could really hurt us because um, if someone can read your messages and do all these things, of course, it's super convenient. When all this didn't happen, you had to call them. If they didn't pick up, you couldn't communicate. And if even going further back, if they didn't have a phone or phones didn't exist, you'd have to physically go to their house, which would be a nightmare. Now you can just it takes 10 seconds to get the same message it could have taken over an hour. So that's really good, but it also places tremendous power in the hands of like a very select few people in our day-to-day lives. And I think the one culprit is, if all of this is Facebook, it's everywhere. In among the older populations, it's generally its own app. Among younger populations, it's Instagram. In India, Asia, and Africa, it's WhatsApp, which is a Facebook affiliate. So what do you guys think about these larger companies just knowing everything, sort of?
It's kind of crazy because Facebook just almost has a control in your life. And so imagine if somebody from Facebook was just sitting in on your call and listening to what you're saying. That would just be crazy. And especially with the big WhatsApp scandal that's been happening recently and all that stuff going on with it. It's just crazy how much power Facebook has, and people don't really regard Facebook as much of a power as it actually is. But in my opinion, it's one of the most powerful companies in the world, and people need to start thinking about it that way.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
this is
definitely,
something.
definitely.
I forgot what it was. I think it was Reuters or someone. They had rankings of companies in terms of soft power, which was power that goes beyond like their net worth or something. And the top five countries were all state-run companies, but number six was the first private company, that was Facebook, simply because of how many people it interacted with on a daily basis.
Yeah, also now when companies hire you, they look at your media and your social media and the things you post, and um, if your Facebook stuff is also kind of leaked and stuff, it make them easier to like get all that stuff, and whatever you put on social media is gonna be out there forever, and you need to make sure you don't make those types of mistakes where you post something that you don't want to regret in the future, and a company can maybe not hire you because they see something online that doesn't show like portray the true you or something like that.
Yeah, I think the craziest thing is that it's like always going to be there. Like, maybe you could delete a post, but I think that, Facebook archives can go back to like since the start and they can still dig up stuff on you. And I think that's so, so scary to me as like a user.
So you guys both talked about things being on there, and you said something about dig up the posts. That sort of relates to, I think, the whole political correctness debate. Don't you guys feel because of social media and all, the political correctness has sort of maybe gone too far, and now it's just the only thing that matters, sort of?
I think that political correctness is important, and I feel that people think that they can ignore it by hiding behind a fake username. And I think that's just not fair. And I think that it's important to be politically correct in the environment that we're living in today. And I think that we're becoming more and more aware, partly because of social media and like just the way that everyone's banding together. So I think that's a good part of social media.
You don't think it's gone too far in a way that, like, for me personally, I remember reading a testimonial from Kellyanne Conway, who's one of the used to be the press secretary for the Trump administration, and although they didn't care all that much, like they didn't care too much about what they said, if you were a politician and had to craft a tweet or a press release or something, how difficult must it be? You have to like read it with 12 different filters just to realize, okay, am I not insulting this community or this particular part of people, even if it's totally unintentional?
Yeah, imagine being Trump or Biden right now, and if you say one word, it can change the whole perception of somebody like on you, and um, like even any other big political person around the world, like the amount of media like that's covering you on a daily basis, every single move you make, like you have to be completely almost perfect just to make sure that people aren't on your tracks, you know?
I
Yeah, I
think
guess people have become more sensitive, as we've gone further ahead. And I definitely think that it's at one point, you don't know what's going to offend whom. But I think it's important. I think it's important to understand why people would feel badly about one thing or the other. And I think it's especially important for leaders in politics, especially to realize, what is seen as rude to a certain community, because that's how you bring about change.
so. Of course, it's important. I don't think it's justified for anyone to be completely oblivious to all of these things. But don't you guys think there should be like a balance where it's not the only thing that matters? Because I remember reading somewhere uh, that it said political correctness and social media are raising a generation of people who just try and find faults in everyone else. And because again, it doesn't political correctness doesn't just extend within the confines of what you say. It goes to everything: what you wear, what your actions are, who you're who you're in association with. So I think just how it's become an all-encompassing factor, and how easy social media has made it to just say, oh look, this guy was wearing something that marginalizes this community, and then it gets shared in within 10 minutes, half the population has seen it. I think that's just really something that's gone a bit too far.
Yeah,
Yeah, and actually adding to that, like cancel culture has become so popular because of that. So, do you guys have any thoughts on, like, cancel culture?
yeah. That was actually what I was about to say. I feel like cancel culture is not really a good thing right now because some people just get canceled for mistakes they made in the past, and no matter what they do to try to change it, it's not gonna make a difference. And also, like you said at Yush earlier, if one thing gets said online, it can get spread to half the population within 10 minutes, and it can changes people's like perception on you completely, and it's hard to come back from that, you know?
It's again, there has to be a fine line. Like if someone has been like racist or something for the last 10 years, of course they should not be pardoned. They shouldn't be accepted back by the society. But I feel the whole cancel culture thing, where we won't do this because one guy has a thing, it's just going to make it, it's just going to create a world where it's best for people, for all people to not have any opinions whatsoever. And it's just, I think it's really making everyone a bit more mindless, where where I think it's just not having an opinion is good, because of social media, everyone can divide into groups of like-minded people. And so if let's say in our friend group there are 10 people, and I make a statement on one side of the spectrum, all the people on the other side can just band together and privately condemn whatever I've said. And it just, in that way, just encourages everyone to not have an opinion and just be just a mindless robot going along with their lives.
Do you think people are a little bit too sensitive right now in comparison to how people used to be?
I think so. I think definitely. I feel like, the way they say that, oh, the older generations, they were more hardy, they were less sensitive, they were less emotional. I definitely think that has really changed in, like consider our generation itself. People are so overly sensitive about the littlest things. And I don't think that gives people who, like, we're talking about past mistakes and stuff. It doesn't give people room to improve on those mistakes if you're just constantly, giving hate to people. So I think that's something that's pretty sad about social media.
The permanence factor is one that just makes, like, if not even social media, but just something, a quote of theirs or something, maybe like a yearbook letter or something like that, where someone who's maybe 25 or something now, but and now that they're like famous or well known, and when they were like 14 or 15 they made a mistake and they said something when they weren't fully informed, when they weren't as who they are then, it sort of just creates a thing of no forgiveness. It's like a road of no coming back.
So on that tangent, what is your thought on, like, age restrictions for, social media?
So I think it's somewhat necessary, because I saw a documentary on Netflix that said something about in 2011, when Facebook became very widespread. Every single year in teenage girls, there's been a spike in hospital cases for teenage girls due to self harm, and obviously suicide rates have gone way up. And the only major thing that happened in the world in around 2010, 2011 was social media, and now it's just skyrocketing. It's going up to 10, 12% every single year, which I think age restrictions are important, but they're just not feasible. How do you almost every site is 18, 16, whatever it is. Like YouTube is 18 plus, and yet I'm sure 90% of our peers would use YouTube, if not 100, if not 100%. So as good as they might be, they're not feasible.
Yeah, I don't even know that YouTube was 18 plus until you just said that. I assumed it was 13 plus or something, but um, honestly, somebody like could just fake their age on a um account, right? And nobody can really do anything about it, and it's just too hard to stop it. But if they're able to do it, then an age restriction would be pretty good because a lot of young people are kind of getting involved in social media before they should be, and it's kind of changing their childhood and just their perception of the world, like before they actually go into the real world. So You can look at it both ways, I guess.
So, what better example of this would be than a quote? I think it was Putin or someone who said something. He said that Greta is a very like enthusiastic and um, she has a good heart and all that. But she said he also said that she's a bit misinformed and too young. What do you guys feel about like how do you guys feel about like age and how that would go into activism, especially considering yesterday in India, at least yesterday was Martin Luther King's birthday, and on that topic of activism.
I think change starts from us, like we're the youngest generation. And, Greta Thunberg is like talking about something that I feel like so many people just don't acknowledge, but it's gonna, it's gonna depend on us to, talk about the future of our planet because we're the ones who are gonna be, living in it. So I think that to say that young people, shouldn't be influencing other young people, I think it's just a bit unfair, like as we're seeing as generations are progressing that suddenly kids are so much more informed, and I think a big part of that is social media, and we're able to see so many things. So I think that's something so positive, people are actually taking charge, young people, and that's, I think, a really important aspect.
Yeah, I agree. Like young people actually have a lot more exposure to just they can see things like from like I could know something that's happening in Europe right now, even though I'm not in Europe, and that's kind of important. The news is really good like that way, and what Greta Thunberg's doing, like helping the world out when a scientist has really stepped in and done that to the level she's been doing it is pretty impressive. But at the same time, you can look at it the other way where a lot of people are getting misinformed through apps like TikTok or Instagram where they're just not getting real information and it's just spreading. So you can look at it both ways in that argument as well.
So I think
Yeah, I mean, like, sorry, I used go
yeah,
ahead.
you can go.
No, I was just gonna say, like, on the subject of TikTok, like, it's literally been banned in India because of like issues surrounding this. And I think, I don't know, like, everyone keeps talking about how TikTok's eventually gonna be banned in US. So what's your thoughts on that?
So TikTok's ban was because it was stealing data. It wasn't because of misinformation. The main reason for TikTok being banned was it's how they would steal the data and send it back to servers within mainland China, and that was really the concern that a lot of people have. In India, for example, it wasn't banned on its own. It was banned along with many other apps that have nothing to do with misinformation or news as part of a large campaign. I think Cam Scanner and a lot of other apps were banned like this. So I think while TikTok is a very interesting thing because it is a form of social media and it's probably the dominant one now, it's it's got a very polarizing impact on everyone's lives, particularly the younger generations.
Yeah, and in America, for example, TikTok is just way too popular, and TikTok really changes like into the politics of TikTok. I feel like people go too much into politics when they don't actually understand how it actually works, and TikTok is a big reason for that, I guess. But the good thing about social media is people are able to show off their talents. They're able to express their life. They're able to have fun. So that's a really positive impact of TikTok and social media in general, I guess, that way.
I was just thinking about, what you said, like, like the spike in self harm in teenage girls. And I think that, like TikTok and Instagram, they contribute to such false perceptions of, what life can be, and like, expectations of beauty, of, body image issues. And so I think that's such a terrible thing about social media, like how that's, I think, as I used to say, like it's constantly growing, this sort of need to be with the trends and be with the popular things that are going on in life. So like I just think that social media is really harmful in that sense.
Yeah, again, that study that I quoted. It was only for teenage girls, but I'm sure a similar effect would happen in teenage boys also. Maybe to a lesser extent, but still there. And I think the problem is because all these things are these superficial things are being created because when you take a photo and post it, you don't post a sad moment, you don't post a moment of this or that, you post only the most happy or celebratory moments, and it sort of like sparks like a feeling of emptiness in other people when they look at this and they see, oh, he's having so much fun, why am I not having the same fun? Or the same thing with like the beauty and all those things. There was an interesting piece published by New York Times that I read a few years ago. It said that isn't it somewhat scary how a person's happiness can be quantified by how many likes and comments they're getting on their Instagram posts and stuff like that.
Yeah. Another thing I read was people in their head think about the way you look from the outside, and they try to compare that to the way they think on the inside, which is not the way to go because everybody has their own issues on the inside. But when you look at Instagram or like yeah, Instagram posts and Facebook posts, all you see is how they look on the outside, and you expect your life to be like that. But people have to understand that even those people that are posting the best moments also have insecurities themselves and have issues themselves, and it's just hard to look at another person's post and think that way, you know.
Yeah, I think a big problem with what's happening is simply how um, you're sort of not really portraying who you are in a way to get more likes and these things, and it just gives a false sense of value where someone doesn't maybe has a lower self-esteem than they ideally should because they're not getting many likes, or people aren't like whatever, like retweeting or reposting their comments or things like that. And then the same happens in reverse, where someone gets too excited or starts becoming like a bully or something just because they've got a larger following and a larger network of people that are willing to listen to what they have to say. And you made up an interesting point about the inside and outside of a person. I feel that way you're really just being ingenuine, where you're not actually showing who you are. You're just showing what you want to be and what you think, or not even that much. Maybe what you think other people will like to see from you. So it's really not you at all.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest reasons why social media has contributed to mental health issues in our generation, especially. Like, just the constant need to feel like, you're happy and you're a certain, like, you want to look a certain way on social media and, create a new persona for yourself. And, like, people are just constantly finding the need to be happy, 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 which is just not the reality in the world.
Yeah, there's just too much comparing, and it's, when you look at somebody, you just hope you're them, but you have to understand that everybody just think like posts what social media expects them to post or what they think society wants them to post, but they don't actually show the true like side of them, and it actually kind of hurts other people as well. And it's a constant chain that's just going on all around social media, and nobody really is talking about it, and it's going to cause a lot of like people to hurt themselves and a lot of people to be depressed, and it's just a bad issue, I guess.
So, what are your thoughts on digital activism? It's it's like probably the biggest example in recent memory would be sort of when the Black Lives Matter movement was happening. Everyone was posting black squares on their social accounts. What are your thoughts on social activism?
I think that it can be used for really good like ideas, like or really good movements, and if it's done right, I think it can make a really big impact on the world because like we said earlier, whatever happens digitally like spreads really fast, and if you're able to spread good meanings and good images around the world, it'll go like really well. So digital activism can work really well, and it spreads really fast. So yeah.
So, what about the effect of people like something about how people are being raised as cowards where you're not face to face and you're not like you can mess with someone or do something. I think Mike Tyson had a quote that said if any of the people who say something bad about me on social media actually met me in person, they'd never do anything because they would know that I'll just punch them in the face. And they're sort of sheltered within the confines of their own home on social media. So what do you guys think is the impact of that?
I
feel
mean,
like
I think that's why cyberbullying is so widespread because people can just hide behind a screen and say like this horrible stuff, but they can never really confront these real issues when it comes to, being in a face to face situation.
yeah, people can just cyberbully, and especially like if you look at popular influencers like followers as well, a lot of them are really toxic, and they can just say whatever they want because they just want to spread hate online. That's just not what online like should be. And it's a really bad like culture that's going on online, and nobody's really like everybody's trying to put a stop to it, but there's just like everybody that's cyberbullying just has issues in their own life, and they're just trying to spread issues to other people, but they should try to spread like love and not just be like this toxic and stuff, if that makes sense.
So this is sort of going to be a tangent, but you guys brought up the points of cyberbullying. What do you guys think about just general like bullying in general in like a school environment? Because again, all of us are in school, and bullying we know does extend beyond the school years and into adult life and all that. But in a school, every school fully understands that bullying is happening. They do what they do. They propose initiatives to counter and mitigate the effects of bullying, yet nothing happens. What are your thoughts on like bullying and anti and the effects to counter it?
I think bullying stems from serious psychological issues that I feel like in so many places in the world are just not acknowledged. And I feel like people that are bullies and that are being bullied need help to, stop them from doing this. I think what people don't recognize is that bullies are also emotionally extremely disturbed, which leads to this aggressive, like rude behavior. It doesn't just naturally happen. And I think it stands the same whether you're bullying in person or cyberbullying. So I think that we need to recognize that everybody needs to acknowledge mental health issues and like talk about it.
So what would be your sort of plan of action if I don't know if if you guys have experienced bullying, but you certain on a personal level, but maybe it's to someone else. Um, Actually, I know both of you have because now you know a guy in 10E. Nishant, you knew a guy in Quill Valley with me. So, what do you guys think about how to counteract bullying and proper measures for that?
I think people need the confidence to stand up to bullies. And until the time that whether it's the person who is being bullied or other people who are just oblivious, like they're looking at it and they don't do anything. I think it's just about having the confidence to go up to a bully and say like this is not right. And that's what is more important than saying, oh, don't bully. I think it's
So I think
that you need to
that's
take action.
I think your point of view there is a bit idealistic because one thing, but if you look at physical bullying, it's always a bully picking on a weaker person, either mentally, physically, whatever. And I don't think it's easy when a simple way of saying it, if the guy is 2 inches and 2 inches taller and 30 pounds heavier, you're not gonna you're not gonna fight back in a way if they steal your lunch money or whatever they do. And then what happens if it's like a group of people, because it's often not one person that's doing it to another person. It's often like a group of people excluding others. This doesn't happen as much within boys, but in girls it happens quite a bit where a group of people just exclude someone, and it's sort of like the movie Mean Girls in a way.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of bullying happens to people that are alone, and you need to kind of have some kind of support system to stand up to bullies. And if you show the bullies that you're not just alone, it kind of makes them not want to be a bully, I guess, from what I would think. And also, people like, I don't know if people trust adults, but going to adults is another way to like counteract bullying. Although I don't know if that's really that effective because a lot of people don't really have trust in adults. So yeah.
It's not the trust thing. I think it's sort of just the perception of being weak in a way, because in my experience, this must have been close to 10 years ago or something. If you try to go to an adult, it's and then the adult tries to take action, it's always going to, all your peers are just going to be, hey, you're so weak, you can't deal with it yourself, things like that. And you need your parents to step in for you. And at an older age, it's sort of going to be like, what are you going to do now that your parents aren't there? You're all on your own.
I think that's a really interesting point, but I think that asking for help isn't the worst thing. I think if you're in a really bad situation and you don't see yourself getting out of it, it's okay to ask for help, you know. Of course, you know, when you're older, your parents won't be able to bail you out of every situation. But I think that, you know, you should have a good support system around you, and it's okay to rely on that support system, even if, you know, it helps you to conquer a fear of yours.
So these fears that, like, point about bullying is no one bullies a person who's emotionally or physically stronger than them. So I think the root of the problem is just make it in a way that, again, I think you said that bullies themselves have some problems with them, or they're just trying to hide some insecurities or something like that. So I think the solution to the problem is completely separate from bullying itself. It's mainly, how do you how do you stop these insecurities? How do you give people the confidence not to do it in the first place? I don't think the problem will be solved from the side of the person who's being bullied. You have to stop it at the source and sort of attack the source like that. I think a parallel would be in the war against drugs, where you don't fight the drug suppliers and all. You fight the demand for it.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I think that makes a lot of sense. Just you have to cut it off from where it starts, or, you know, it'll just keep going on and on. Like, you know, you tell a bully to stop bullying one person, they can just move on as easily to bullying the next person. But I think you need to find the root of the issue and solve it there.
Does anyone else have else to add?
Oh no, lovely.
All right, well then, thanks for listening to this episode of the Momentum Shift podcast. Catch us in the next one.